Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather, 4th day of January now, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist at the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First weather graphic up here is one for a high wind warning, and we've got a high wind warning for winds gusting 60 to 65 miles an hour. But first, it's let me give you the time frame on that. It's from 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, Tuesday, to 4 p.m. Tuesday, tomorrow afternoon. And it's for the west side of Prince of Wales Island, including Craig, Klawock, and Heidelberg. And winds, again, 60, 65 miles an hour. So possible damaging winds could knock down trees and power lines. And of course, loose objects could get blown around. And that's, again, for the west side of Prince of Wales Island for tomorrow. That pretty snappy storm will be pulling northward off the coast of the Panhandle. Otherwise, that's the only warning out. There are no other watches, warnings, or advisories out for anywhere around the state. The wind chill warnings and advisories have ended over the interior, and so not too bad everywhere else. And on the satellite here, you can see, we'll start out west. It's kind of a upper level low circulation there near or just south of the central Aleutians. And also back up to the north and northwest, Arctic air coming south and southwestward on the north and northeast winds there from the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. You can see pushing southward across the western central Bering Sea there. And more in the way of breaks. In fact, it looks like some pretty widespread clearing occurred over the southern Bering Sea there, and especially from Kiska Island, but kind of up north of Adak and Atka, although Atka had clear skies this afternoon, and that's exactly the way it looks there in the satellite imagery. And Unmak Island not looking bad as well, but a few snow showers there over toward eastern Aleutians or toward Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. And then a pretty strong storm south of the Alaska Peninsula moving eastward. And actually, that's the one that's going to bring the high wind warnings and the storm warnings to the Panhandle and off the coast tomorrow. And that's far enough south, not really affecting the Alaska Peninsula or Kodiak Island. Kodiak had some light snow today, actually, that changed to some light freezing rain this afternoon, but didn't amount to too much there. And again, some that low moving up to the southern Panhandle there. That brought some rather windy conditions to areas there. Let's see, Ketchikan, peak wind gusts 50 miles an hour. Cape Spencer, peak wind gusts 50 miles an hour. And then Cape Decision, 57 miles an hour. And those winds, peak wind gusts tomorrow, the next one could be even stronger than that, or actually forecast to be stronger than that. With that next one will be coming up that's now southwest of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, you can see the clouds that brought the light snow overnight to the south central Alaska area there, kind of up in over the western Copper River Basin, spilling into the northeastern interior there, mostly mid and high level stuff. And any precipitation amounts over the interior today didn't amount to too much at all. Real light and scattered, nothing too significant with all the action down over the southeast coast. Even those rainfall amounts weren't all that much. Let's see. I think probably, Middleton Island and Gulf, they had 0.2 of an inch of precipitation there, and not much heavier there for the maybe 1/3 of an inch falling this afternoon over Prince of Wales Island with the weakening system there. You can see that low center is off the coastline at the surface there, about 971 millibars, the front having moved through now, and moisture extending all the way up along the North Gulf Coast with that weak trough, and then that other system well south of the Alaska Peninsula tonight. Actually, a wave develops with that frontal boundary and pulls northward, and then the main low center, 946 millibars, slowly moving eastward, not too fast, and you can see the gradient already tightening up late tonight or after midnight on the south coast there, and still some, looks like another surge of light snow will come across south central Alaska this evening, possibly bring another inch, kind of a repeat of what we saw the last 24 hours. Otherwise, southern Alaska dry. Also some moisture and snow showers or flurries, so could get up into the central interior there, at least briefly, and look for possible flurries or possible fog, North Slope and Arctic coast. And the northern Bering Sea with the cold air coming down, pretty widespread area of light snow and snow showers there with that overwater trajectory, picking up a lot of moisture. And that'll probably move into the Pribilofs tonight. See an increase in the snowfall there, but nothing real heavy. and the winds won't get really strong as either, like they could this time of year there over the Bering Sea. And not much change out there for Tuesday. You can see that low center now pulling northward and northwestward late in the afternoon off the coast of the Panhandle for the high wind warning. Strong winds across the entire area there, and winds increasing for the North Gulf Coast, and 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts Delta Junction had today. Probably will be a repeat tomorrow there, and the eastern Copper River Basin rather windy. And that low pulls westward there to just off the coast of Kodiak Island by the afternoon on Wednesday, with that front pretty active for pretty good winds and moisture all along the North Gulf Coast, southeast coast, and the Queen Charlotte's Dixon entrance. Dry over the interior. No change over the Bering Sea. Lows tonight, 25 to 35 north slope in the Arctic coast, and 10 to 20 below for the Seward Peninsula. Around 5 for St. Lawrence Island. Below 0, a shade below for the Copper River Basin, otherwise 5 to 15 southern Alaska, and lower 20s to upper 30s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, lower to mid 30s or mid to upper 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, mid 20s Pribilofs. Below 0, north and west of the Alaska Range out to the Arctic coast, lower 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. And for the lows Wednesday morning, about the same, call it in the central interior, 5 to 15 below or so, except Eagle right around 0, and 15 to 25 below for the north slope, maybe even a little colder there. And otherwise the Panhandle in the 30s, except toward Northern Link Canal, Glacier Bay, near freezing for Yakutat. And into the, say, 5 to 10 below Copper River Basin, and 5 to 15 for the lows for south central Alaska, mid-20s toward the Kachemak Bay area, mid-30s Kodiak Island, in the 20s for the Alaska Peninsula, all of the Aleutians. And the highs for the afternoon, mid to upper 20s, south central Alaska, to upper 30s there for Seldovia over to Seward, and upper 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle, below 0 in the north.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather for Tuesday morning, we've got some IFR western north slope there and the western Arctic coast. VFR, though, from looks like about Point Barrow over toward the east side there, and you pick up some marginal VFR. With the IFR just off the coastline, and then eastern interior into the central interior on down through the Kuskokwim River Valley. Looks pretty good with VFR into the Susitna Valley, central eastern Copper River Basin, but an area of marginal VFR with a little bit of IFR there over the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, northway, or up north of Eagle along the Yukon River there, all the way around to, say, almost Galena, sort of, and then IFR, Kotzebue Sound into the Buckland area, central Seward Peninsula. Bigger area of IFR there off the southwest coast, southeast Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs, north side of the Alaska Peninsula, then mostly marginal out to the west for the Aleutians. And real narrow band of IFR there, southern Kodiak Island, northeastward, and links up with a more widespread area over the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, we've got Tuesday afternoon, there we go. Still solid IFR, southeast coast of a big storm rolling up, and that extends west and northwestward there across central southern Gulf into the Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak, Fognak Islands, and then the upslope areas of the Aleutian Range, Kamishak Bay IFR, and the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Interior areas of VFR, and then some scattered areas of marginal VFR, and even more widely scattered areas of IFR. And moving on to the Wednesday morning outlook, still some IFR there, Nunivak Island, and along the southwest coast, cutting across Cape Newenham, northeast Bristol Bay VFR though, and then that IFR zone across most of the Alaska Peninsula, cutting around Sitkinak, up the east side of Kodiak Island, and then northeastward there, Cape Yakataga, Cape St. Elias area into Yakutat, and most of the southeast coast still IFR, but becoming marginal there from Port Alexander down to Prince of Wales Island, and the interior pretty good in the central areas, mostly VFR, and then some marginal lower conditions off to the east and to the west, and especially the northwest. And for Wednesday afternoon, IFR still southern Nunivak Island and staying off the coast though, but catching Cape Newenham and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, and then cutting across the peninsula there, across the Aleutian Range, Kodiak Island, IFR, and into Kamishak Bay, southern and western Cook Inlet, up to about the Forelands. Northern Cook Inlet, Manduska Valley, Susitna Valley, VFR. Matanuska Valley could be marginal becoming IFR as you get into the Copper River Basin. And up north there, some marginal VFR, Yukon Flats area, up to the Old Crow zone there, or up around the Old Crow, which is just east of the border there. And then some more IFR, Central Arctic Coast North Slope. Getting into passes, Anaktuvuk, split the difference here, VFR for Anaktuvuk, marginal, call it, or for Adigan, call it marginal VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, possible IFR, eastern entrances early in the day. And for rainy, marginal, windy VFR. Isabel, same forecast, look pretty good, VFR. Mentasta, possible marginal VFR in the northern approach, otherwise VFR. And for Tanita, looks pretty good, VFR. Portage, occasionally marginal. Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels with the storm rolling northward off the southeast coast. They're pulling some warmer air up with it, but not a big surge, but 2,000 feet along the coast there. And at the surface south of the Pribilofs and hugging the North Gulf Coast. And as far as icing goes, of course, the heaviest icing and the greatest threat is going to be with the storm coming up over the eastern Gulf from the northeast Pacific as it travels. So probably a band of considerable moderate along in advance of the frontal boundary there, with lighter icing extending all the way up to Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, and then a zone of areas of isolated moderate extending westward there into Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula on the east side, and Kodiak Island, and then some scattered stuff remaining out over the southeast Bering. And the jet stream, even still south of the Panhandle there and off the chart just about everywhere else. And looking at 9,000 feet, easterlies 40, east-southeast 40 knots, Kodiak Island, northeast 40 knots, northern Bering Sea, and 75 knots there into the Panhandle, or back up there, coming up in toward Dixon Entrance. 55 knots for the Panhandle and the stronger winds at 3,000 feet. Turbulence-wise, moderate chop St. Lawrence Island, and increasing turbulence from south to north throughout the day for the southeast coast, considerable moderate.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century, and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip. Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How's the day going?
Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires.
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference. Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past. Or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently. In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke. Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this. These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're one match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in it.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management.
Fire Sciences Lab, right over here.
So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. Tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fires basically come through and cleared out the understory.
and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's going to be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Still showing what looks to be a slight reduction in the sea ice for northern Bristol Bay there, Togiak Bay, and also along the southwest coast from Nunivak Island over to Kuskokwim Bay, and just some variations there on up to the north and into the Bering Strait, and not much change there for Cook Inlet, maybe a tad more ice, it looks like south of the Forelands, no change for Kamishak Bay. And coastal water forecasts, let's see, we've got storm warnings out for the south coast of the Panhandle, go along with a high wind warning down along the for Prince Wales Island area, and southeast 50 knots sustained, and hurricane force wind gusts there off the coast of Prince Wales Island, 65 knots. Storm warning also for Clarence Strait, southeast 50, seas 18 feet, and for Stevens Passage, northeast 30 knots, gusts 45, north 30 for Lynn Canal, and gales for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Outlook for Wednesday, bring it down to 40 knots there for much of the coastline from the south-southeast, seas running 26 feet. South winds 30 knots for the extreme north coast, and the central and northern inside waters. South to southeast 15 knots, Clarence Strait down to small craft advisories with 30 knot winds from the southeast. Prince William Sound tomorrow, northeast winds 25 knots, northern Cook Inlet north 25, and 30 knots south of the Forelands. Kamishak Bay, the Barren Islands, and the North Gulf Coast, all gale warnings tomorrow. East-northeast, 35 knots for the North Gulf Coast into and across the Barren Islands, northeast 35 Kamishak Bay. Outlook for Wednesday, small craft advisories continue for Cook Inlet, 25 knots, or northeast, 25 to 30 knots with 8 to 9 foot seas. Gale warnings, Kamishak Bay, northeast at 40, southeast 40 for the Barren Islands, and southeast winds 35 knots for the North Gulf Coast. A little bit of an increase in the winds there for Prince William Sound, east at 30 knots, 7 foot seas. Kodiak Island, east 25 there, but northeast 30 for the Shelikof Strait area, on down to Castle Cape, and small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, north to northeast 25 knots, northeast 25 for Bristol Bay. And for Wednesday, northwest 25 knots, blowing right across the peninsula, seas up to 13 feet, north 25, Bristol Bay. And south 25 there on the east side of Kodiak Island, otherwise Shelikof Strait, northeast 25. On Alaska Island tomorrow, north winds 20 knots. Unmak Island, north-northwest 20 knots. Adak-Anatka, west-northwest 20 to 25. 25 knots for Amchitka, and 20 knots for Kiskashimi and Attu. Outlook for Wednesday, Kiskashimi and Attu Island, west winds 20 knots, not too bad. Small craft advisories, northwest 25 for Amchitka. And north to northwest 30 to 40 knots, Adak and Atka, and eastern Aleutian areas, both islands there, or all three or four, north to northwest 25 to 30 knots. For the southwest coast tomorrow, small craft advisories, northerlies 25 to 30 knots, and that pattern right up to St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island, and the Pribilofs all north 25 to 30 knots, seas 9 to 13 feet. And for Wednesday, St. Lawrence Island, small crafts continue, north 25, southwest coast north 30, and 25 knot northerlies for the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island. And up along the Beaufort Sea coastline, starting there in the east at 15, and northeast 15 on the central coast, but lighter winds there on the west side. Call it northeast at 10, and 15 knots from the north, Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson. Brisk wind advisories, though, Cape Thompson to Wales for 25 knot northerly winds. And then those fall back a little bit, become a little more northwest there for the Chukchi Sea, Wales to Cape Thompson at 20 knots. Otherwise, the central and western Arctic coast, 10 knot winds, mostly from the north, and can't even call that a breeze there for the eastern Beaufort Sea, out of the west at 5 to 10 knots. And then for tonight, look for some mostly cloudy skies up there for the North Slope, Arctic coast, possible flurries, possible fog, but not guaranteed. And maybe some moisture getting into the interior areas there, with maybe areas of flurries, light snow showers, or maybe some very light snow, but don't look for much in the way of accumulation. Snow increases again here, another surge comes up into southern Alaska, Cook Inlet, Madawaska Valley, but less than an inch expected. And that intense storm beginning to approach the panhandle there, and the other one staying well south of Kodiak Island. And you can see tomorrow high wind warnings, Prince of Wales Island, and storm warnings there for the southern coast as well as southern inside waters. And then Wednesday, that pulls back to Kodiak Island and weakens, but the front stays pretty active, especially along the North Gulf Coast, and it stays wet all along the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak all the way down the Panhandle to Dixon Entrance.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.